Hollywood loves its scandals big, messy, and dramatic, but every now and then a story arrives that doesn't just stir conversation, it consumes it. That's exactly what happened when a private conflict involving actress Blake Lively cracked open and spilled into the public eye, unraveling into one of the most complicated and high-stakes legal battles in recent memory. What started as whispers of lawsuits and hurt reputations quickly ballooned into a sprawling fight that crossed state lines, pulled in unexpected names, and sparked a debate about power, influence, and how far someone will go to protect their image in an industry built on perception. It didn't begin with cameras or statements. It began quietly, as most Hollywood disputes do, with someone filing a lawsuit. But from that moment forward, the situation refused to stay small. Instead of shrinking into a confidential settlement, it grew, one filing at a time, until the drama was too large, too layered, and too public to ignore. And woven through it all were shocking claims about reputations destroyed, careers damaged, emotional distress, and financial losses so large they didn't seem real. The numbers alone made people gasp. Lost earnings estimated at more than $56 million. Lost profits climbing towards $71 million. Reputational harm valued at roughly $34 million. And pain and suffering placed somewhere between $250,000 and $400,000. Add everything together, add expert testimony, add projected future losses, and suddenly, the filing looked like the framework for a claim that could, depending on interpretation, edge toward $1 billion. The public reaction was instantaneous. Some saw it as legal posturing. Some thought it looked desperate. Others wondered if these numbers reflected Lively's true fears about her long-term career. Because in Hollywood, damages aren't just numbers. They're statements. They're strategies. There's signals about how far a person is willing to take a fight. To understand why the figures were so shocking, you have to understand how these cases work. In high-profile entertainment disputes, attorneys often ask for enormous amounts, not because they expect to win that entire figure, but because they need space for experts to build economic models. A film career is unpredictable. A reputation can shift overnight. An endorsement deal can evaporate based on a rumor. But even with that legal context, even with the understanding that the numbers were placeholders, something about the filing felt extraordinary. And it raised a question that echoed throughout the industry. If Blake Lively was still appearing at premieres, still smiling on red carpets, still booking projects, still standing next to A-list co-stars, what exactly had been destroyed? Meanwhile, the people connected to the case, including individuals who insisted they had done nothing wrong, claimed their lives had been upended. Work disappeared. Reputation crumbled. Some stepped away from the public sphere entirely, and suddenly the contrast became part of the narrative. Blake Lively was still working. Others weren't. But the legal war wasn't just about damages. It was about confusion. Multiple cases were unfolding at the same time, overlapping but not identical, creating a legal maze even seasoned observers struggled to follow. One case involving director Justin Baldoni was dismissed, a major moment in the saga, but it didn't shut the door. Instead, it opened the next one, a battle over fees, costs, and potential damages flowing in the opposite direction. Complicating everything was an allegation that multiple people across different platforms and states had contributed to a smear campaign. That theory became the connective tissue linking the cases, but it also created a major legal problem. Damages cannot be requested twice. If Lively sought financial compensation in one courtroom, she couldn't turn around and request the same losses in another. Judges guard against this fiercely. And that's when analysts began asking a subtle but important question. If Blake Lively was requesting enormous damages in this case, tens of millions in lost earnings, lost opportunities, emotional distress, and reputational harm, then what exactly did she plan to request in the next one? The timing suggested something else entirely, that maybe her team feared the other case wasn't as strong as originally hoped. So they put everything on record here, building a financial narrative as large and dramatic as the headlines surrounding it. And yet the biggest risk in this strategy wasn't legal. It was psychological. If the case ever reached a jury, those individuals, regular people, not industry insiders, would hear the damages request at the very end of the trial. That final number would be the last thing they heard before deciding who was right and who was wrong. And juries do not appreciate exaggeration. Asking for too much can feel out of touch. It can make a case look greedy. It can make the plaintiff appear unreasonable. And the moment a jury feels that shift, trust evaporates. Once that happens, it doesn't matter how strong the earlier arguments were. Credibility is everything in a courtroom. Reputational harm only complicates this further. It is one of the most difficult damages to prove in any defamation-adjacent case. There are no receipts, no invoices, no measurable losses unless the person can prove they were explicitly denied work because of the alleged wrongdoing. And Blake's public presence didn't look damaged. Her career appeared intact. She was visible, working, photographed, and connected. So how does one place a multi-million-dollar price tag on a reputation that, at least from the outside, hasn't noticeably declined? The defense was expected to seize onto that. They could point to her ongoing career, her continued public appearances, her film promotions, her fashion features. Meanwhile, the defendants could argue that they had endured far worse over the past year: scrutiny, public pressure, threats, and a steep decline in their opportunities. But beneath the arguments, an even more surprising number was circulating: the attorney fees. Sources speculated that Blake Lively's legal costs might already be north of $20 million. That's not counting damages, not counting future fees, not counting experts, not counting appeals. Just the cost of the fight itself. And with every new filing, every new demand for documents, every new request to compel discovery, those numbers kept climbing, which led to the most unsettling possibility of all. If Blake Lively ultimately lost, she could face pressure to pay not only her own massive legal bills, but also a portion of the other side's costs. In civil litigation, this can happen. It doesn't always, but it can. And the more aggressive the strategy, the more discovery battles, the more motions filed. The more a court might begin to question whether the litigation was being used not just to resolve a dispute, but to overwhelm opponents. By this stage, observers could sense the weight of the conflict. The filings were getting sharper, requests for documents were becoming more demanding, court responses were more irritated, and some of Blake's repeated requests for private communications, including encrypted messages and voice memos, prompted pushback. Judges dislike redundancy. They dislike relitigation of issues already decided. And they especially dislike when one side repeatedly asks for materials the court has already denied. There is a line in litigation where persistence begins to look like pressure, and pressure begins to look like harassment. Judges rarely use that word outright, but they have other tools: warnings, orders, or even sanctions. And when a judge has already said no once, twice, or 3 times, they do not appreciate being asked a fourth. The saga took another turn when a separate case involving an alleged strategist named Jed Wallace was dismissed. Not for lack of evidence, but because the judge determined the case didn't belong in New York at all. It belonged in Texas. That jurisdictional ruling slammed a door Blake Lively needed to keep open. Without Wallace tied into the New York case, her legal team lost access to the discovery they hoped to obtain. They could pursue him in Texas, but that would take time that the New York court might not wait for. And time is everything in a case this fast-moving. With the Wallace case tossed from New York, Blake's broader strategy took a hit. Suddenly, the narrative of a coordinated campaign became harder to maintain. To some observers, it looked like momentum shifting. To others, it looked like the natural ebb of a case becoming too large, too complex, too unwieldy to control. Yet the truth remained simple: Blake Lively was still on the offensive. Filing, requesting, pushing, appealing, expanding. And in Hollywood, offense sometimes looks like strength, and sometimes like desperation. As the filings expanded and the legal arguments grew sharper, something else began happening beneath the surface. The public conversation surrounding the case evolved. At first, people were confused, then curious, then divided, and soon the debate spread far beyond legal commentary. It moved into the territory Hollywood hates most: perception. A place where narratives shape themselves, and truth is decided less by evidence and more by momentum. Every motion filed became a headline. Every court response turned into a thread. Every denial, every delay, every objection, all of it fed a growing storm of commentary. And with each development, the central question grew louder. What exactly was Blake Lively trying to prove, and how much farther was she willing to push this? Because with every passing week, the filings seemed to stretch wider, reaching into areas that blurred the line between legal necessity and personal determination. Her team sought messages, voice recordings, strategic documents, communication histories, anything that could reveal who said what, and when, and why. They argued these materials were essential. The defense countered that the requests were overbroad, duplicative, or intrusive. And again, judges found themselves in the middle, weighing fairness against boundaries. One recurring concern threaded through the court's responses: proportionality. In civil litigation, discovery must match the needs of the case. It cannot become limitless. And more than once, the judge signaled that some of the demands were not proportionate, especially given rulings already made. When a request is rejected but resurfaces later, courts take notice. When it resurfaces again, courts begin to lose patience. And when it resurfaces yet again, courts begin asking why the party keeps asking at all. That tension grew more visible when the court addressed the accusations involving director Justin Baldoni. His case had already been dismissed, a decision that fundamentally changed the balance. Yet filings on the plaintiff's side still referenced allegations tied to him, even as the court stressed that discovery related to his matter had limits. The dismissal did not erase the controversy surrounding him, but it did shift the legal landscape. And every time the filing drifted back into territory the court had already closed, the judge pushed back, making clear that certain paths were no longer open. But while one door closed, another opened, and this one was aimed directly at Blake Lively. Baldoni filed his own response, pushing back with arguments that surprised many observers. According to his filing, not only was he not responsible for the damages she claimed, but he alleged that her lawsuit had caused him significant harm. Professional opportunities had disappeared. Reputational damage lingered even after his dismissal. Legal fees mounted, and he argued that fairness required acknowledgement of that. This changed the conversation dramatically. Suddenly, the case was not just about what Blake said she lost. It was also about what others claimed they lost because she sued them. In court, causation matters. And when multiple parties argue that the other side's actions triggered the harm, the story becomes far more complicated than villains and victims. Meanwhile, another layer of the conflict continued quietly but forcefully: the involvement of third parties who insisted they had nothing to do with any alleged campaign. Their argument was straightforward. They didn't coordinate anything. They didn't plan anything. They simply commented, reacted, or participated in online discussions already unfolding publicly. In their view, they were being dragged into a dispute that had nothing to do with them. And some claimed the litigation had devastated their lives far more than anything they ever said or posted could have affected Blake Lively. That claim too became part of the record. As these competing narratives intensified, the financial landscape of the case kept shifting. Blake's damages model, already massive, faced scrutiny on multiple fronts. Analysts pointed out that she was simultaneously asking for expansive damages in more than one jurisdiction. And if she succeeded in one state, it could undercut her arguments in another. The law simply does not allow double recovery. You cannot be compensated twice for the same alleged harm. So each time she updated her damages claims, observers wondered how the numbers would align with the rest of her litigation strategy. Meanwhile, legal costs spiraled. Large cases require teams of attorneys, economists, public relations consultants, forensic analysts, and experts who specialize in modeling long-term career impact. Every hour billed, every review, every deposition, every motion, all of it added to a total that, by some estimates, had already become staggering. People close to the case whispered about numbers that didn't sound real: 20 million in fees, possibly more. And though no one could confirm the exact figure, everyone agreed it was high enough to reshape the stakes for everyone involved. The court calendar didn't help. Deadlines approached quickly, filings stacked up. The judge issued a series of orders intended to keep the case moving, but every new development seemed to spark another dispute. One side said they were missing documents. The other said they had already supplied everything required. One side said the requests were essential. The other said they were intrusive or irrelevant. Each disagreement required hearings, responses, and clarifications. And each clarification added to the cost. Beyond the courtroom, the cultural weight of the case kept growing. Online discussions exploded, but they were fragmented. Some people believed every word of the filings. Others insisted they were exaggerated. Some questioned motives. Others questioned timing. Many asked why the litigation was growing instead of narrowing. And almost everyone wondered what the endgame looked like. Because at this point, the conflict wasn't simply about who said what. It was about reputations, all of them. Careers were on the line, not just Blake's, but also those of the people she accused, the people she sued, and the people whose names appeared in the filings, even if they were not defendants. And through it all, the court kept issuing reminders. The case was not about public narratives. It was about evidence, facts, documents, testimony, legal standards. And the more public conversation twisted the details, the more the judge focused on narrowing the scope inside the courtroom. But narrowing the scope did not make the case smaller. If anything, it made the stakes feel sharper. With each passing week, the story grew less like a typical Hollywood dispute and more like a long, tangled chess match, one where every move had consequences and every mistake could cost millions. Yet despite the weight of the conflict, one central truth lingered at the center of it all. None of this was anywhere close to ending. The filings were still coming. The depositions hadn't started. The biggest legal battles were still ahead. And the outcome, the actual resolution, was a puzzle with missing pieces, disputed facts, and emotional stakes far larger than any number written on a damages spreadsheet. For some, that was the most unsettling part of all. This wasn't the climax. It wasn't even the middle. It was only the build-up, the rising tension before the real confrontation. And Hollywood, whether it wanted to or not, was watching. By the time the case reached its next phase, the atmosphere surrounding it had shifted from curiosity to something heavier, something more unsettled. What had begun as a dispute over reputation had grown into a sprawling web of accusations, denials, legal maneuvers, and unanswered questions that seemed to multiply instead of resolve. It no longer felt like a simple conflict between two sides. It felt like a machine, enormous, grinding, and impossible to stop, pulling in everyone connected to it. And with every new filing, the tone sharpened. Blake Lively's team continued to push forward, trying to frame the narrative through a series of arguments that painted the alleged actions against her as part of something larger, something orchestrated, something capable of causing the long-term career damage outlined in her filings. But the defense pushed back just as strongly, attacking each claim point by point, challenging the numbers, questioning the logic, and highlighting inconsistencies they believed weakened her case. One of the defense's most consistent arguments centered on timing. They pointed out that Blake continued to work, continued to appear publicly, continued to receive major brand partnerships even in the months following the events she described. From their perspective, her career had not stalled, her reputation had not collapsed, and her public image had not suffered anywhere close to what her filings suggested. And in the world of civil litigation, the burden of proof always rests on the party asking for damages. To justify the numbers she claimed, she would eventually need experts who could convincingly explain how harm existed, even if it wasn't immediately visible. But while the defense leaned on logic, the plaintiff leaned on perception and emotion. They argued that damage doesn't always show itself right away. That reputational impact can extend far beyond the moment something is said or posted. That the entertainment industry often watches quietly before making decisions that never become public. That harm can be slow, silent, and invisible until it suddenly isn't. Yet even as these arguments unfolded in legal documents, another complication emerged. The cases in Texas, the filings in New York, and the earlier dismissed claims didn't fit together cleanly. Some allegations overlapped, some contradicted one another, some depended on evidence that other courts had already limited or denied. And as those contradictions grew more visible, observers began asking whether the broader strategy was becoming too complex to sustain. Then came the turning point. Not a verdict, not a dismissal, but a realization that seemed to hover over every new development. The more the case expanded, the more risk Blake faced. If her claims were successful, the damages could be enormous. But if a judge or a jury believed the numbers were exaggerated or believed the legal strategy stretched too far, the consequences could shift in the opposite direction. One detail that quietly gained attention among legal experts was the issue of potential counterclaims. Because once Justin Baldoni's dismissal became final, his team gained the right to pursue their own allegations if they chose to. And even if they didn't file immediately, the possibility hung over the case. Every day the litigation continued, the cost grew. And every day the cost grew, the pressure increased, not just for the defendants, but for Blake as well. Meanwhile, the court's tone became more pointed. Judges don't often show frustration directly, but they do leave clues. Subtle comments, written reminders, or orders that make clear the clock is ticking. And this case had reached a stage where the court wanted it to move forward. Not sideways, not backward, not into new disputes. Forward. Deadlines were set. Expectations were clarified. The message was obvious. The time for expansive discovery was ending, and the time for evidence-based argument was beginning. But evidence meant something else, too. Depositions. Depositions are where cases shift. They strip away speculation and require people to speak under oath. They reveal not just what happened, but how people react when confronted with their own statements. And because the case involved online commentary, private communications, strategic discussions, and public narratives, the depositions promised to be intense. On Blake's side, her team would need to defend the scope of her damages, explain the logic behind the large numbers, and provide clear timelines showing how specific events connected to the harm she claimed. On the defense side, the individuals accused of contributing to the alleged campaign would need to demonstrate independence, lack of involvement, or lack of intent. And Justin Baldoni, despite being dismissed, remained a central part of the story's public perception. Even if he wasn't required to participate in discovery, the shadow of his case lingered over everything. But the biggest wild card, the one thing no one could predict, was how the depositions would intersect with the public conversation. Because every leaked snippet, every out-of-context comment, every misinterpreted exchange could spark a new wave of narratives online, which could in turn influence jurors, witnesses, or public opinion. And the closer the case moved toward trial, the more dangerous that became. As the months passed, the emotional weight on everyone involved became increasingly obvious. People close to the defendants described the stress as overwhelming. They said careers had stalled, opportunities had dried up, and the constant fear of being misunderstood or misquoted hung over every word. Some withdrew from public life altogether. Others tried to remain vocal, insisting they had done nothing wrong, pushing back against the story they believed was being forced upon them. Blake, too, faced mounting pressure. Even though she continued to work, the narrative surrounding her had changed. Instead of being admired for her projects, she was now part of a legal storyline that followed her into interviews, press junkets, and social media discussions. She found herself in a position few stars anticipate, a moment where her professional achievements were overshadowed by a lawsuit she initiated. The deeper the case went, the more the lines blurred. Was she fighting to correct a wrong? Was she protecting her image? Was she responding emotionally to online scrutiny? Was she acting strategically? Or had the litigation taken on a life of its own, no longer driven by the original incident, but by the escalating nature of the battle itself? And beyond all of that hovered the unspoken truth. Eventually, the case would reach a point where settlement, withdrawal, or trial would become unavoidable. And each choice carried risks. Settling could look like retreat. Withdrawing could look like defeat. Taking it to trial could expose everyone involved to unpredictable consequences, financial, professional, and personal. Because in a courtroom, even the most confident strategy can fall apart under the right question at the wrong time. By now, the industry had grown restless. Executives whispered about delays. Insurers watched nervously. Studios monitored the situation quietly. And publicists braced for the media frenzy that would inevitably accompany the next major development. Hollywood hates uncertainty. And this case had created more uncertainty than anyone anticipated. But beneath the legal filings and strategic battles, beneath the debates about damages and jurisdiction, beneath the public commentary and online narratives, one reality stood untouched. This conflict had changed everyone involved. Some lost opportunities, some lost peace, some lost anonymity, and some, perhaps all, lost trust in ways that wouldn't be repaired easily. As the case pushed deeper into its most volatile phase, a strange quiet settled in. Not the quiet of resolution, but the quiet before something breaks. Before the next filing lands, before the next deadline hits, before the next major order drops, before the next unexpected twist resets the entire story. Because one thing had become crystal clear. Whatever happened next would change the trajectory of this legal battle permanently. And once that moment arrived, there would be no going back.